The notion that an incredibly popular, heavily circulated newspaper can offer condemnation and squarely place the blame on the Netanyahu administration, while that same exact sentiment expressed in America and the Western world is like immediately silenced, immediately shut down, immediately attacked, is crazy. Commentator on how UK media overall has not been humanizing. Oh, this is great. I mean, friend of the show, Owen Jones, calls out war crimes being committed in Gaza on both sides and how military aid contributes to the crisis in the Middle East.
Happen because it's supporting what is a war crime. And that's what we should be talking about, is a war crime being committed with the support of the British government. This military contribution, by the way, is completely tokenistic. If anyone thinks it's going to do anything worthwhile, it won't. And I don't understand the framing of prevent all-out war in the region. It won't do any such thing, clearly. What it does show is that the British government will stand behind the Israeli state whilst it commits a war crime. Now, what's happening at the moment is collective punishment, which is illegal under international law. We were all horrified by the atrocities committed by Hamas against innocent civilians in Israel. What is now happening is illegal under the Geneva Convention. You cannot cut off...
OK, let's just go back to these ships, though, because what we have there is a hospital ship.
There's not...
And certainly from the way that I...
But the reason I'm frustrated about talking about that is...
we witnessed the military...
there's nothing...
Medics, they didn't regard which side people came from. They treated them. And if we are about to see a humanitarian crisis on...
Al Arabiya reports Israel's military has advanced a small distance into Gaza with its tanks. Oh, they're moving in.
Scale, then that ship could be there to help out, Owen.
This is too tokenistic a contribution to be worth commenting on. All it shows, the only significance of this, is that it shows the British government will unequivocally, unconditionally back Israel while it cuts off water, food and electricity, while it drops white phosphorus. People should Google white phosphorus. What it does is like raining fire on civilians. It sticks to your skin and burns it off. It's a war crime to use that against the civilian population. The British government's position is that it will support collective punishment against a population which is the size of Gaza of East London. It has 2.2 million people. 80% of them rely on international humanitarian assistance. 50% of them are children. 50% of children. They are hungry, desperate kids. They did not kill those people, those poor, innocent people in Israel. And the position of Britain is that the hundreds of Palestinian kids who have already died, more will be killed, as well as medics who are dying, as well as UN officials, journalists, the whole works.
I think we need some balance here. We genuinely need a bit of balance here. I was talking to a Jewish friend this morning who lives in London, and said that her daughter, who's Jewish, is in Paris, is not going out because she's so fearful. You've got WhatsApp groups in the Jewish community saying to people, don't go out because they're really worried about...
I'm sorry, this is so fucking callous, dude. This is so callous. Like, this is crazy. Like, Jesus Christ, dude. Like, look, I don't want to say that people and their fears are ridiculous or unreasonable, but I cannot comprehend how you can see human suffering, like so much human suffering, and dial it back to like, well, you know, I got friends who are scared in Paris. I got friends who are scared here. Like, well, what do you think those kids are how do you think those kids are feeling? Are they not kids? Are they not real? Do they not have dreams? Do they not have family members? Do they not fear bombs being dropped on them? Like, how can you there is no equivalent here, okay? There is no equivalent here. It's just, it blows my mind. They keep repeating this fucking argument on Swedish news all the time. Like, what the fuck? This man is explaining children that are currently in danger. The first thing he has done, of course, is to understandably condemn and unequivocally mention the horrifying toll on children on the Israeli side as well, and then move into talking about the ongoing bombing campaigns in Gaza. Those children are like they're experiencing fear as well, and they are under real attack, not some hypothetical attack that might happen to those who we care about more here. It is unimaginable for me, at least, to present this as a counter, to be like, well, you know, I know you're talking about children who are being killed right now, but what about a possible attack that might happen hypothetically in the future in my backyard? That is crazy. Like, how is that an argument? Is that a real balance? Is that genuinely a real balance? Is there any morality in the situation? That is so crazy.
Anti-Semitic attacks in the UK, all over the world. So there's an, you know, if you were Jewish, I think you would feel different. I think you'd feel very afraid. I think the shock and the as you always said, the horrific nature of the attacks that happen.
Like Islamophobic attacks happen all the time in America, okay? Islamophobia is very present and has been ever present. I would never, ever in a million years, fucking years act like my circumstances are worse in any capacity than a person living in Iraq. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. Like, the counter to this literally would be if I were to turn around and say, well, you know, Islamophobic attacks happened after 9/11, and I'm very scared when someone is telling me about like the atrocities that occurred in kibbutzim in southern Israel. You know what I mean? That would be understandably an insane fucking thing to say. Everyone would look at me and go, you're a ridiculous person for saying that. You're a piece of shit. And guess what? I would be a piece of shit for saying that. Okay? Sorry, I can't really consider, if I were to fucking ever have the audacity and the lack of moral clarity to turn around and say, sorry, Islamophobic attacks happen in America, and I am actually scared of other Islamophobic attacks happening in America to people like me, and that's why I can't even consider the atrocities of children being killed inside of Israel proper. That would be fucking psychotic. You would go, hey man, why did you say that? You are an insane person. And I would be an insane person for saying that. To my Jewish brothers and sisters that are afraid of anti-Semitic attacks, I will always repeat the same things I say in my life that I say to my friends. You are significantly more likely to be victim of an anti-Semitic attack by a Nazi or a white supremacist than you are in the Western world by an Arab nationalist or something. Okay? The only serious response here is explaining the danger of conflating the interests of Israel with the global Jewish community. It harms Jewish people. Yes, that too.
To completely innocent Jew, and calling civilians is a kind of very, it's euphemistic. These were families, these were mothers and fathers and children, and the way they were killed, and the fact that it was absolutely unashamedly, we weren't even trying to get a military target, we were just going kill people in a terrible, terrible way. So I understand.
I want to.
I really have to.
I don't think.
No, I really want to focus on our subject,
yes,
which is about
completely
the purpose of these ships.
Right.
Now,
I agree, it's tokenistic.
just so we're clear, but just so we're clear, what they're aiming to do is patrol to prevent arms making their way to Hamas.
Can I answer why I just think I'm frustrated about it? In terms of why my response is somehow not acceptable? Because I'm saying that the significance of what Britain is doing is through this tokenistic gesture. It's showing that it supports what Israel is doing. And just on... No, I have to respond very quickly to that. You're absolutely right. Anti-Semitic incidents always go up during these flares of violence. That's always true. And every attempt to blame Jewish people for what's happening committed by Israel is anti-Semitism. What is also happening, it always happens at the same time, is you get an increase in anti-Muslim hate crimes. And they are being spiking in Britain and elsewhere as well. But the point I would just make very politely to you is, you talked about the fear people have, Jewish people here and in France and elsewhere. The fear of people in Palestine now is based on the fact they are being bombed. They are having white phosphorus dropped on them.
Yes.
And the reason I'm frustrated is Palestinian...
Hamas
caused those Palestinian children didn't do that.
No, of course
and they're paying. And Palestinian children are of equal worth, their lives, to that of an Israeli child.
But I think
and people aren't saying that in the media.
Yeah, I would like to hear that from her. I would like to hear that from anybody, really.
Media. But Palestinian people are being treated as less than human.
Again, this support that's being offered, that's on its way.
What do you want us to say about this? I'm genuinely curious. I don't understand what the point
I'm just saying, if you look at the purpose of these two ships, what they're there to do, one is to prevent arms making their way to Hamas. That's a good thing.
They're not going to do that. It's a tokenistic effort.
The other is to provide hospital assistance. Now, presumably, that's for whoever needs it, regardless of which side they're from. Well, that is aiding in what could be a catastrophic humanitarian crisis.
Which Britain could stop by taking a stand against collective punishment, which is killing innocent people.
Cannot stop that. I mean, my fear when I heard that we were sending this task force was, oh my goodness, we're not getting involved in another war, are we? You know, surely we have learned that when we step into the Middle East, no good thing ever happens there. And I think we've already got Ukraine.
I mean, that's how Israel happened. So interesting that she has this perspective. I wonder what she thinks about that other side of the equation.
We're involved in, and now we're going to be involved in this. It just like I feel like as a country we've got so many problems here, and yet again we're getting, whether it's tokenistic, which I think it largely is, here we are getting involved.
You just made a great point. Larry just made an excellent point there, which is every single one of these military interventions has been a disaster. Yeah. You're right. Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, we could go on. But that's also true with Gaza. Every single Israeli onslaught on Gaza killed huge numbers of innocent civilians, and it did not stop Hamas, and you also had Israeli soldiers dying.
The take is so the whole human shield narrative has like completely. I always dismiss it, but it's wild how much people just go off with that. For the record, like if you ever talk to someone, if you ever talk to like normies on this issue, like they just go, "Oh no, they're human shields." Like Hamas is like forcibly keeping them in their houses at gunpoint so they die. Like the propaganda surrounding that is genuinely wild, and it's yet another way to. It's yet another way to justify human casualties. You know what I mean? Always. Hi, Hasan. Anonymous donated $3. First, let me start with, I truly appreciate you. I'm an Israeli left-wing supporter. Would love to share my pure experience as civil as possible. You may yell at me, curse me, ridicule me. It's probably a huge mistake for me. Much love. What? Oh, man, you wrote anonymous wrong. Do they not get that while they're talking about bullshit? Israel is bombing an area displaced by Gaza residents? Yes. We are watching all the Western leaders and almost unanimously support genocide and ethnic cleansing in Palestine, and there's absolutely nothing we can do about it. Shocked. MSNBC actually defending Palestinians and explaining how Israel's an apartheid state and how they treat Palestinians.
Defend itself.
Oh, this is Ali Welshi, right?
Indisputable fact. But so do Palestinians. One thing clear, Israel has a right to exist and to defend itself. That is an indisputable fact. But so do Palestinians. And that's a fact that's often ignored.
Another fact is at the top of the hour, there's a 3-minute ad break. If you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe, which you can do for $5 or for free with the Twitch Prime. I totally forgot to run it earlier. I'm fucking dropping the ball many times over today. Here's the 3-minute ad break now.
Palestinians are, at best, third-class citizens in the nation of their birth. The idea that it's even remotely controversial to call what Israel has imposed on Palestinians a form of apartheid is laughable. One look at a current map of Israel, Gaza, and the occupied territories conjures up only one other example: apartheid-era South Africa. The Israeli government, on an ongoing basis, declares parcels of land on which Palestinians live to be either of military or archaeological importance, causing residents to be evicted. Sometimes there's a court case, and almost always the Palestinians lose. Yet months or weeks later, that same important land suddenly becomes home to a brand new Israeli settlement. As more and more Jewish settlers take over land on which Arabs live, the occupied West Bank becomes de facto more Israeli and, in the explicit hopes of the Israeli government, more Jewish. This is a long-standing attempt and a deliberate attempt to force Arabs who have lived in that land, sometimes for hundreds of years, out. It's an attempt to dilute their presence, because to have Arabs as full participants is, in the opinion of the Israeli government and their courts, diluting Israel. Just prior to the pandemic, I toured many of the contested areas and homes from which Arabs are being pushed out, both in Israel proper and in the occupied territories. Palestinians don't control the important parts of their lives. Palestinian families are refused permits to build or renovate their homes. When they connect their homes to the municipal water supply, Israeli soldiers sometimes cut the pipes. When they attempt to harness solar energy because their homes are not on the grid, Israeli soldiers literally come and remove solar panels from.
This is an old clip. I don't think he would be able to say this now. I don't think if he said this right now, they would be like, you're supporting terrorism.
From their homes. I spent an hour and a half traveling alongside an elderly
MSNBC has quietly taken 3 of his Muslim broadcasters, Ali Velshi, Mehdi Hassan, and Ayman M., out of the anchor's chair since Hamas's attack on Israel last Saturday amid America's wave of sympathy for Israeli terror victims. I don't believe that. Jory was being too nice to Palestine on Wednesday, and MSNBC took her off for the rest of the week. Wait, really? That person was saying, I can't feel my legs, by the way.
Palestinian woman who is being transferred between 3 ambulances from Gaza to the no man's land in between and then into Israel to get cancer treatment. 3 ambulances over the course of 1 mile, more than an hour to cross the border. That's how Gazans live. Without medical treatment because Israel prevents it. Without electricity much of the time because Israel prevents it. Without the ability to fish in the Mediterranean Ocean because Israel prevents it. Without an airport or a seaport because Israel prevents it. Like Israelis, Palestinians also have a right to exist and to defend themselves. But there is no one willing to help them do that. Not the Israeli courts and not the U.S. government. What the U.S. also shares with Israel is the belief that Hamas, the political party that governs Gaza, is a terrorist organization that calls for the destruction of Israel. Hamas is supported by the majority of Palestinians in Gaza. Hamas may not be in the best long-term interests of the Gazans, but peace hasn't really worked out for them. Faced with an Israeli government which pens them into what has been called the world's largest open-air prison.
Dude, this is a fantastic assessment.
They have chosen a government that most of us wouldn't prefer. One that is not given to negotiation and moderation and respect for its neighbor. Israel needs a new approach to the Palestinians, and America needs a new approach to Israel. After more than 7 decades of not just being deprived of land from which they were evicted, Palestinian frustration runs deep. It may be worth going deeper than what you may hear inside your bubble and understanding the depth to which the Palestinian people are subject to apartheid in their own land, deprived of basic necessities, and subject to relentless civil rights violations. This is not a secret. It's out there for you to see. You just have to look for it.
Oof. That was really good. R.I.P. Muslims eat dick. Nice, man. Thanks. Usta, ben Türkiye'de yaşayan Filistinliyim. Bütün kuzenlerim öldürüldü, bebekler dahil. Allah rahmet eylesin. Owen Jones was on Sky, gets shut down again when talking about Palestinian lives. This is the one I saw.
Minister, Senior Labour MP Dame Margaret Hodge, and the author and Guardian columnist Owen Jones. I mean, I don't even know where to start. I mean, the stories that are coming out, and we're learning more and more about this. It is heartbreaking. It is sickening, as President Biden was saying. Margaret, you were talking earlier before we went on air about how you visited the kibbutz recently, that we have seen some of these horrors emerging from.
Yeah, I've got a lump in my throat, Sophie, so I'm sorry about that, but I was at Kfar Aza in February. We spent a day there, and it's I spent the day with a 3rd-generation kibbutznik, so the kibbutz has been there for ages. And as you walked the periphery of the kibbutz, you could hear the call to prayer from the Muslims on the Gaza side. And you did think, for goodness sake, why don't these 2 communities talk to each other? But what was so awful, it isn't a rich kibbutz. It sort of felt to me like an inner council estate. The housing wasn't very well off. They made their money from a plastics factory. And every home had a covering, so because they were used to bombs. They had a minute to get to the shelters. And the covering was supposed to protect their homes. Now, what is so awful is the people I've travelled with had been in touch with the woman who showed us around, spent the day with us and showed us around, and she's been WhatsApping us. And what we now realise is that probably the WhatsApps that came back weren't from her, they were from Hamas. And the idea that 40 babies were killed there, some of them beheaded, that homes were ruined, that adults were killed. We don't know how many are left of the people that we met there. It's just beyond horrible. And what is worse about it I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. And I just, I haven't got relatives and friends there, but, obviously as a part of the Jewish community, everybody I talk to has got somebody they know there, a cousin, brother-in-law, a brother or sister, somebody is there. And this absolutely horrific bit of terrorism is condemned. Well, I condemn it. I stand by Israel. I was proud today that there was a standing ovation when Keir said he stands by Israel. And Israel has got the right to defend itself. I hope they do that within the rule of law. And what is particularly depressing for me, having been...
I hope that they do that within the rule of law. Well, they're not. This is not a... When was this posted? 3 days ago. Okay. Well, to be fair, I guess it hadn't started at that point. It would be normal to speculate. Actually, no, they had started at that point. It wasn't within the rule of law even then. That's when they shut off the water and power and electricity, right?
In February, I think this has pushed back for years, if not decades, the idea that we can never come to a peaceful solution. It's pushed the agenda back. The terrorists have managed that. They're out, maybe that's what they wanted, but it's pushed that agenda into the background rather than bringing it forward.
Thank you for... I know it must be really difficult after you've been there, you've met some of the people who are living there, and so thank you for sharing, your experiences of it. It does bring it to life, what some of those horrors are that we've seen. Do you share that fear that things are going to get worse before they get better?
Yes, of course, and obviously, firstly, it's so important to share the disgust and horror at what happened. I was at a rave on Saturday with my friend who's an Israeli citizen, and I was with him as he took a call from his family. His niece escaped that rave. Two of her friends were kidnapped and are now being held hostage by Hamas. There's no cause on earth which justifies the slaughter of innocent civilians, and the horror and disgust is raw with so many people, and the anguish of what those left behind are going for is indescribable. Obviously, my concern about what happens next is partly informed by what's happened before. When we talk about how Israel responds, already the Israeli government, which is a far-right government, have made clear that they will institute a policy of collective punishment. The defence minister said, "I've ordered a complete siege in the Gaza Strip. There will be no electricity, no food, no fuel. Everything is closed. We are fighting human animals and we act accordingly." That is the language of war crimes. It is illegal under international law to impose collective punishment on a people. 80%. I've let you speak. So
This part is pretty illuminating. The woman he's debating, Margaret Hodge, was one of the main perpetrators of removing Corbyn from Labour on bogus claims of anti-Semitism. Oh yeah, okay.
To respond, 80% of those who live in Gaza, which is an open-air prison, depend on humanitarian aid.
But you're not acknowledging Owen. You're not acknowledging Owen.
Margaret, I've let you speak at great length.
I tell you what I can't stand is that you're using the horrors that we've experienced in the last 3 days to bang the drum about an issue that you've been banging the drum on forever.
No, I'm not.
And what I think you should really think about is how the people of Israel who have now been there for, have nowhere else to go.
Margaret,
they have nowhere else to go.
Is it possible for me to respond? Right now, Palestinian children whose life is as sacred as a child in Israel are being slaughtered. They are dying, okay? Now, 50% of the... Please let me finish.
I'll let you come in.
50% of...
It's come on. You have to let him get a word in edgewise. This is crazy. This perspective is rarely ever reflected in general. This perspective is rarely ever reflected in mainstream media, let alone British media, which is infinitely worse than
the population of the Gaza Strip are children.
I have to pee, hold on.
And those children are being bombed by a government which has said that we are fighting human animals and we act accordingly. Benjamin Netanyahu demanded the civilians of Gaza Strip leave. You cannot leave the Gaza Strip. It is under blockade by air, sea and land. Now, 96%... Okay. Please let me finish.
Yeah, I will, but...
96%, because Margaret spoke at length, 96% of those who have died in the last 15 years are Palestinians. And we cannot talk about what's happened because, when I spoke to my Israeli friend who took that call, for him, what he wants is this to never happen again. And that context for him was so important. Because unless there is a lasting peace, which does mean ending the occupation, and a policy of apartheid, and ending the murder of Palestinian civilians, then this will never end.
Margaret.
Well, all I would say is that Owen is completely and utterly ignoring what has happened over the last few days. You haven't ignored all.
Owen, just wait.
All you've talked about, Owen, is your obsession, the obsession with so many people around the issue around Palestine. It's been an obsession forever. And you should just think at the moment. If you were an Israeli sitting there.
That's crazy. Oh, you've been obsessed with the Palestinians? Like, really? That's your counter? I mean, I watched this already, but it is mind-numbing. How is this take a controversial one for real outside of the context of Netanyahu's very specific interest for Israel? Nothing that Owen is saying is controversial. The problem is you can't say uncontroversial things. You can't, guys. If you want to understand the attitudes that we have in the Western world in comparison to like attitudes that are allowed, sentiments that are allowed to be expressed even in Israel, okay? Look no further than the treatment of the Harvard Students Association versus the Haaretz piece. The editorial piece by Haaretz in the first day of the Hamas actions inside of Israel proper was directly condemning and squarely placing the blame in the hands of Netanyahu's cabinet and his administration and their policies of trying to maintain an apartheid state. Okay? 0 people looked at that and went, wow, what a fucking anti-Semitic thing to say. Why? Because it's the fucking paper of record in Israel. Okay? Sure, they're leftist liberals, but it is still a Zionist paper, and it is the paper of record. Okay? Whereas that very same sentiment expressed by the Harvard Students Association was met with so much backlash. What is a paper of record? Like the New York Times is the paper of record. Do you understand? Margaret Hodge said she never felt connected to her Jewishness until Jeremy Corbyn and his supporters in the Labour Party made her realize he/they did not want people like her in the party and that he's a fucking anti-Semite. She also consistently supported the Iraq War. Yes, papers that not only report the news but archive it. Exactly. That's why when you want to get a snapshot of a Haaretz is in the paper of record, Yehudot Ahronot is. Really? I thought Haaretz was the paper of record. I mean, Haaretz is the liberal leftist paper in Israel, but it is also the most it's the most populated. No, it's like even more populated than Times of Israel. Yeah, see, Haaretz is Israel's newspaper of record. Wait, let me look this up. I'm pretty sure. Hold on. I mean, Haaretz. It says it's the Israel's paper of record on his Wikipedia, at least, from this Open Source Center Media Aid Guide. I think it might be the most popular paper outside of Israel about Israel. They're mainstream and Zionist. I think that's your point. Yes. I mean, we're getting lost in the semantics. Haaretz is a very popular newspaper. It is, I think, the most popular, but maybe I'm wrong. Top newspapers in Israel. The Jerusalem Post is number 1. Well, Jerusalem Post had similar opinions as well. So, Jerusalem Post, Yehudot Ahronot, Globes, Panorama, and then Haaretz is the fifth most popular newspaper according to in 2019 in Israel. Haaretz crowd has become smaller and smaller. The more red ones are Yehudot Ahronot and Israel Today. Latter was also called the Bibi paper. As of 2022, Haaretz has the 3rd largest circulation in Israel. It's Israel's oldest paper. Anyway, we're getting lost in the semantics. It's okay, Washington Post. You know what I mean? New York Times, Washington Post. Imagine if they fucking wrote on 9/11, on the day of 9/11, that this is squarely a consequence of George W. Bush's like foreign policy and lack of interest in like listening to the fears, the very real fears. Here's the semaphore article that I was going to look at. Anyway, the notion that an incredibly popular, widely circulated newspaper and its editorial team can offer round condemnation and squarely place the blame on the Netanyahu administration for a attack of terror that Israel experienced, while that same exact sentiment expressed in America in the Western world is like immediately silenced, immediately shut down, immediately attacked, is crazy. Meanwhile, MSNBC has quietly taken 3 of its Muslim broadcasters out of Anchor's chair since the Hamas attack on Israel last Saturday. Amid America's wave of sympathy for Israeli terror victims, the network did not air a scheduled Thursday night episode of the Mehdi Hasan Show on the streaming platform Peacock. MSNBC also reversed the plan for Ayman Mohyeldin to fill in this week on the network for host Joy Reid's 7 p.m. show on Thursday and Friday. Mohyeldin, an Egyptian-American journalist and a veteran NBC News correspondent, covered the conflict from Gaza for 2 years. In 2021, he aggressively taken out of the chair. Does that mean fired? No, that means like you've been sidelined. In 2021, he aggressively questioned Israeli leaders on strikes on the territory. 2 network sources with knowledge of the plans told Semaphore that the network also plans to have Alicia Menendez fill in this upcoming weekend for Ali Velshi, a third Muslim American host who on Sunday interviewed a spokesperson for the Palestinian Authority. Some staff at MSNBC have been concerned by the moves, feeling that all 3 hosts have some of the deepest knowledge of the conflict. NBC says the shifts are coincidental, and the 3 continue to appear on air to report and provide analysis. A company official vehemently pushed back at any notion that either Hasan or Mohyeldin were being sidelined in any way. Over the past several days, Mohyeldin has appeared on several programs, such as MSNBC, as a guest, including shows hosted by Reid and Chris Hayes. While he did not host Reid's show, a network official said that the cable channel opted to stick with its more recognizable weekday hosts rather than hand over the reins to weekend anchors. Hasan's Peacock show is taped, and the network official said his show was shelved in favor of keeping coverage on MSNBC streaming service more up to date. Yeah, I think, to be fair, I mean, I don't know. It could be like they could possibly do it because they do have Hasan on other shows. It's not like they don't have him on other shows. And Hasan does have a Peacock show that's pre-taped, so it's not like that being substituted for live coverage does make sense. We have and will continue to cover the barbaric terrorist attacks on defenseless civilians in Israel last weekend and the tragic war that has provoked thoroughly and in all their dimensions, NBC executive. Oh, okay, maybe. Okay, that statement seems a little bit different then. Never mind. Okay. That comes across like you're fucking, that is like, it. Let me explain something. What he's saying is not incorrect. It's just that he mentions at this point the Israeli reaction as a secondary part, like a simple, like a natural reaction. The framing of it is like definitely not great. The moves come as especially when asked about specifically why you may or may not have shelved all 3 of your Muslim hosts that are some of your most well versed on Palestine. But once again, like I said, I don't know because I know that they have been doing hits on other programs quite frequently, and it does make sense. They've been doing hits on other programs. They did the same thing with their black host when BLM started taking off. Wait, really? Ethnic cleansing is considered a compromise. Breaking. Wall Street Journal reports Egypt and the U.S. are nearing a deal to allow foreigners to leave Gaza through Egypt. Yes, mass displacement and refugee camps are in the future and seen as a more peaceful way to ethnically displace members out of Palestine, like human beings that live there.
If you'd had family, I mean, here I am, I'm sitting here, and the people I visited, probably, I don't know how many of them are still alive. Are you saying they have no right to defend themselves? Are you saying they have no right to peace? All you have argued is how, I've never supported the Netanyahu government. No. I've always been critical of that. But at this moment in time, this is the most horrific. This is the most horrific occasion and you should you condemn it. Do you even condemn it?
I just opened in the strongest possible terms condemning the atrocity.
But you don't think they have the right?
I don't believe a military solution.
You don't think they have a right to defend their state of Israel?
The military solutions that have been pursued against the Gaza Strip have led to huge bloodshed.
You don't think they have the right to defend themselves?
I think a military attack on Gaza will lead to countless dead Israeli soldiers and huge numbers of civilians.
They should allow the hostages to die.
And I have to say, Margaret, when you said, it's very difficult to have a conversation if you just speak over each other. I don't think it's that nice to watch.
Because you make me really angry because you're using this horror.
No, Margaret, I'm going to come in. I am actually going to come in. Okay, right. I'm going to come in.
Sorry.
Thank you, both of you, for speaking. No.
We have to talk about the Palestinians being killed now. That's the point. That's not an obsession with the issue. I get that. But to say it's an obsession with Palestine when we're talking about Palestinian civilians who are being killed
right now. Thank you very much for coming on the programme and having the debate. I utterly accept that with babies, children dying, it's...
Both. And they both matter the same.
With babies and children...
to say that controversial is...
I think it's pretty clear that with babies and children dying, emotions are running extremely high, and I actually think that this just demonstrates...
Oh, come on, dog. Are you serious? When I try to talk about the killing of Palestinian children and innocent civilians, which is happening right now, Margaret Hodge blamed it on your obsession and obsession with so many people. The issue around Palestine has been an obsession forever. What the fuck? They cut his microphone and we're like, yeah, passions are high. Anyway, the move comes out of MSN, like Democratic Party, MSNBC, like the Democratic Party, which is often aligned, had swung in intense solidarity with the Jewish state after the murderous Hamas attacks. That shift has come with a heated internal and external objections to anything that breaks with solidarity. And has come with social media criticism of Hassan, Mohieldin, and Velshi. Hassan had also been vocal on X, formerly known as Twitter, condemning the Hamas attack and calling attention to the plight of civilians in Gaza. Like, there's never a good time to speak on Palestinians and their plight, I think. Like, it always feels like it's not the right time. Especially when their struggles are ongoing. You know what I mean? Frankfurt Book Fair cancels awards ceremony for Palestinian author. Organizers cited the Israel-Hamas war as a reason for stepping back from honoring a novel about the 1949 murder of a Palestinian girl by Israeli soldiers. Yanis Varoufakis got canceled from his speaking engagement, from what I understand. Here it is. Good and bad news for those who want to cancel me for my opposition to Israel's apartheid and occupation. The good news is that I was canceled in Vienna, where on Monday I was to deliver a 2023 Otto Wagner 2023 lecture organized by the ICA Institute for Art and Architecture, even though I had no intention to refer to the situation in Israel and Gaza. The bad news for you good people who want me canceled is that the organizers lacked the guts to admit that they were terrified of hosting me because of my opposition to Israel's apartheid and occupation. They suggested that we all pretend the lecture was postponed until my new book is out in German. When I refused to participate in that lie, they cited the current dramatically escalating geopolitical situation. The gist of it: civilized Middle Europe recoils in horror when faced with a principled opposition to Israel's apartheid, and then immediately afterwards covers up its cowardice in lies. It's nuts.